Popcorn Junkies, welcome to this review of The Housemaid, the new film by Paul Feig. Curious character. Of course, he gave us Bridesmaids, he gave us the reboot of Ghostbusters with the all-female cast, A Simple Favour. This is directed by Paul Feig. It's based on the book The Housemaid by Freida McFadden. It stars, controversially, because I know she's not everyone's cup of tea, due to her Republicanist, Trumpist kind of far right, is it? I mean, I'm not entirely au fait with all of her political shenanigans, but I know she's not liked by many. Sydney Sweeney. It also stars Seyfried. Brandon Sklenar is in there too as the husband. And what is this? It's a very simple film. Now, from the get-go, what I need to say about this is a resolute. You don't often get them anymore. It's one of those films I went to see because I just needed to get out. I needed to just escape, and the timings on other films didn't work. So I thought, okay, well, let's go see The Housemaid. Let's see what this is all about. And it's a thriller. It's not a horror film. And as I sat down to watch it, I thought, oh, right, this is one of those things. I began to realise I was watching something that I haven't seen in quite a while, which is kind of like a B-movie. I'm sure Paul Feig and all the team involved with it would say, what do you mean it's a B-movie? It's a fucking A-movie. It's a mainstream. Yeah, I get it. But there are all films are made and released with a view to being huge successes. But then there are some films that just have about them a kind of a predictability, a sort of almost slightly camp kitsch and obvious kind of storytelling arcs. They aren't too interested in the fuss and nonsense of character depth and development. They're just sort of interested in getting busy with the plot and moving things on. And I have to say, that's what this film does. It just moves things on. It's perhaps a tad too long. It comes in at just over 2 hours. But the premise is startlingly simple. Sydney Sweeney, on probation, for what at the beginning of the film we do not know, basically goes for an interview to become a live-in housemaid for Amanda Seyfried and Brandon Sklenar. They have a kid who's very moody, very morose child. Very, very well played, actually, to play such an unsort of likeable kid. But you begin to realise why she's an unlikable kid. Anyway, so you meet, and you get quite clear steerage from the get-go. She comes in for the interview. Amanda Seyfried. I haven't seen too much with Amanda Seyfried. I know she's been in a lot. I think this is the first time I've sat and watched an entire film in which she was one of the stars. And whilst this is very much, I think, being seen as a vehicle and a star vehicle for Sydney Sweeney, this is very much, really, I would argue, Amanda Seyfried's film. I mean, it's a double-hander. But I really relished and enjoyed Amanda Seyfried's performance in this. Not more than, because it needed what Sydney Sweeney gave it. But Sydney Sweeney didn't give this anything that you wouldn't expect her to give it. But anyway, so she moves into this house, and it's great because you've got that whole sort of thing of, you know, what must it be like when you have a live-in nanny or a live-in housemaid, and you have your live-in quarters, but you've got to basically live in amongst a marriage and live in amongst a relationship and the inner dynamics of that and all the rest of it. Anyway, so she walks into this house. It's huge, it's expensive, it's plush. Amanda Seyfried looks like the woman who's got everything you could ever want. What's there to clean? You're looking at the kitchen, and I'm thinking, my God, this is what Nadia wishes for every day of her life. And you think, well, it's not going to be too much here. And then cut to, she gets the job. Though we discovered that Sydney Sweeney, prior to getting the job, and she's thinking, will I get the job? She's sort of basically, she's sleeping overnight in a vehicle. You know, she's got nothing. She's got no money. She's got a probation officer. She's obviously really down on her luck. She's really hoping that Amanda Seyfried doesn't check her history or look into her past. Anyway. But she curiously gets the job. And then what happens is you get a really, it's a taut, tight, camp kitsch, cliched. There are times which is just cringy. So like the romance, the sex, many of the scenes, some scenes are dealt with in a very sort of, this is really naff, you could argue, but in a weird way. And I've got a funny feeling this film could end up being a bit of a sleeper hit. That naffness really works in the film's favour. Because what we begin to witness is, okay, so she wakes up the first morning, she's been made the housemaid, and the house is not only a mess, it's a fucking scene of devastation, though still not quite as bad as Nadia's wardrobe after a couple of nights. But it's fucking insane, and she comes down, it looks like someone's come in and completely turned over the joint. It's total dereliction. Everything everywhere. And Amanda Seyfried fires into the scene screaming, where are my notes for some do she's got to do a talk for? And she blames Sydney Sweeney. So from the off, you're in a position, and you're positioned feeling really sorry for Sydney Sweeney's character. You're like, fucking hell, she's fucking entered this woman's insane. Amanda Seyfried is... And I have to say, the strength of Amanda Seyfried's unhinged, what is she? Menopausal, postnatally depressed, schizophrenic, manic depressive, bipolar, narcissistic, psychopathic, whatever she is, she plays it with proper exhausted verve, because she's beautiful, she's stunning, and there are times where she really sort of scrubs up to look beautiful for when the other women in the neighbourhood come over for dinner. Amanda Seyfried, she looks tired throughout this. It's a really quite an unvain performance from Amanda Seyfried, where she looks wild-eyed, whacked out, and unhinged. And that kind of accounts for perhaps why the kid is a little bit morose and a little bit kind of, tight-lipped. And anyway, and then we meet Brandon Sklenar, who's the husband, and he's beautiful. He's got abs that I would just die for. Not literally. He's got, fabulous body. He's just charming. He's got a bit of Ryan Gosling in there. He's got a bit of Ryan Reynolds in there. He's got a lot of Ryan in there, basically. And he's everything. And good casting, because he's naff. He's naffly perfect. The house is naffly perfect. But poor old Sydney Sweeney has been made to sort of, her quarters are in the attic, where there's a window that doesn't open, and it's just a kind of room, and you'll see it in the poster, it's like a key, and there's a kind of lock on it. She says, I'm not too sure about the lock, can I have a key, please? So Amanda Seyfried puts it in the room at the top of the house. And what we witness across this film is just more and more moments where Amanda Seyfried just loses her shit at and towards Sydney Sweeney. She's more and more unhinged. She's dislocated. She starts to sort of blame and believe that Sydney Sweeney fancies her husband. She takes Sydney Sweeney into the man cave, which is a room in which you can watch TV shows. There's quite a nice detail, this detail. And she says to her, Amanda Seyfried says, feel free to come in here, don't worry, anyone else will be around. And you sort of think, it's quite an intimate setting. It'd be like saying to someone, always feel free to come in here and sit with Mark. And then Mark comes in and watches a bit weird. There's a moment where Sydney Sweeney does go in. I think she watches Family Fortunes or whatever it is, but it's that weird American one. I think it's got a different name in America, where the host would kiss everyone as he went down the line. And you sort of think, fucking hell, what weird. And that was such a great choice of thing that the husband, Brandon Sklenar's character, watches in his man cave. It'd be like me coming in here to watch Jim Will Fix It. That would be odd. Anyway, so Amanda Seyfried finds Sydney and her husband in this room, not intimate, but kind of, comfortable together. And so she's right to feel suspicious. Sydney Sweeney has a dream in which she's kind of romantically in a clinch. She gets into a clinch with Brandon Sklenar's character. And so, jealousy kicks in, so you feel sorry for Sydney Sweeney, then you feel a bit sorry for Amanda Seyfried, and then you begin to think, well, how perfect can this guy be? And he does seem perfect. The charm offensive is there. And slowly but progressively, what starts to emerge is that, and they managed to hold it back for quite a while into the film. You'd think that this would be screamingly obvious, but I think the strength of Brandon Sklenar, the husband's performance, is such that you do think, oh, he's trying to manage a mental health issue. It's suggested that Amanda Seyfried's got schizophrenia, that she's mentally unhinged. Oh, and there's the suggestion that she tried to drown their daughter in a bath, and that's why she was put on heavy meds and she was sectioned and all this kind of stuff. And also we do at one point meet the husband's incredibly fascistic, kind of strict, frightening mother. So essentially Amanda Seyfried's mother-in-law is this really horribly tight-lipped, vicious, rules-driven, kind of woman who kind of gives you something and you have to basically worship it for the rest of your life and never break it or touch it for fear of being disowned or destroyed. So it's quite a clever film. It just kind of, well, it's not clever, it's just very functional. But it does a very efficient job of building the character development. So you've got the husband, he's got a controlling mum, he comes from that. Okay, we've got a wife who's tried to kill a child, she's schizophrenic, she's that. Okay, we've got Sydney Sweeney, who's kind of, in her idle thoughts just thinks of having sex with the husband, but at the same time just wants a job because she just wants to save some money. And then a kind of mix-up happens, and it ends up being that she's bought tickets for a theatrical show on the wrong night, you think. Amanda Seyfried wanted to buy ticket shows for her and her husband, but Sydney Sweeney buys them, and Amanda Seyfried says it's the wrong night, you booked them on the wrong. But what you realise basically, retrospectively, is that everything that goes wrong between Sydney Sweeney and Amanda Seyfried has gone right for Amanda Seyfried, because what we discover, spoiler, this is a film about coercive control. And so as the film does this great big kind of U-turn, and we start to realise, hang on a minute, Amanda Seyfried is the victim and she's been gaslit, and she's been set up right down to the, even the kind of the authorities coming in when they thought she'd drowned the girl. All of these setups had been manufactured and facilitated by the husband, who has high connections with the police and what have you. We discover that Amanda Seyfried has actually brought Sydney Sweeney in because of her criminal past, and we discover that she's in for murder. She brutally caved in the head of a boyfriend who she caught having sex with a friend of hers while she was at school. And so you realise, so Amanda Seyfried has booked this woman in to get her in to replace herself, because Sydney Sweeney falls in love with him. He woos her and wines and dines her. They have sex when they go to the hotel, when they go to see the play. Proper love bomb, love bomb, love bomb, love bomb. And what I thought, and as this kind of like a big ship turning, I enjoyed the turn. This was the odd thing about this film. It wasn't particularly original, it wasn't particularly inventive, but it was effective. And I liked the turnaround, because in flashback we're shown that actually the husband locked Amanda Seyfried in the attic room and told her to pull out individual, it's really cruel, pull out 40 hairs with their follicles and I might let you out, because you need to learn that things need to be done the proper way. Having hair is a privilege and all this kind of bollocks and all this kind of stuff. So in flashback, we're told that Amanda Seyfried has been locked in the attic room and then sitting there. So Amanda Seyfried brings in this young woman, Sydney. She knows that he's going to do the same to her. And then we find Sydney Sweeney is locked in the attic after a while. And she's made to carve 21 lines into her stomach by a piece of ceramic from a plate, the plate that his mother bought them from London, in order to know that having crockery or porcelain was a privilege. Again, extraordinarily extreme for film purposes, garish, gory and horrific. And so, be careful if you go and see this. But really, really effective. This is like a fairy tale in a sort of truly Grimm's fairy tale sort of way about coercive control. I'm making a short film about coercive control, and this is entirely different, because mine's quite sort of dark and deep and mean and twisted and moody. This was bright and breezy, and I use the word fun in a sort of guarded way, but it had a sort of fun filmic approach to then delivering a brilliant feminist revenge thriller, because Sydney Sweeney gets trapped in the room, and then it all spins round, and we have a great final scene, gonzo scene, where she manages to turn the tables on him, gets him trapped in the room, and then threatens to ignite the whole house unless he pulls out his front tooth. Because the mum goes on about his grin. Brandon Sklenar, the husband's grin, is what makes him so charming. And so this is a film in which they really target the man's charm offensive, or the coercive controller's charm offensive, and his preening, self-regarding grin and smile and sense of perfection and what have you. They turn it round on him, and he is trapped in the attic room. And thus the film plays out. So this went, again, it's really hard to sort of say. This is a B movie. It was functional. It was effective. It could have been a bit shorter. There were surprises. The biggest surprise, or the biggest U-turn in the film, is a slow dawning realization, which is really enjoyable to experience, because then you begin to think, how are they going to get their own back on him? How are they going to seek revenge? How are they going to wreak havoc on this smug, masculine bastard? And Brandon Sklenar is fantastic. He as this sort of pseudo perfect, shiny, Lothario kind of charmer. Just fantastic. He's just great. And so as a consequence, I found it quite an entertaining, surprisingly entertaining film. And I say all of that with the guarded understanding that Sydney Sweeney isn't someone that we need to be signing up to her political opinions, nor what she values. But again, there are a whole heap of other people involved in this film who don't sign up, I presume, to her political kind of point of view. And I just thought this was a very, very effective film. I think this is one of those films that will surprise people. It'll do well on streaming. I think it's a nice feminist revenge thriller. It was interesting to see how you could take things to such an obviously extreme and almost over the top. Although the violence from him to the women is over the top, it works as a kind of metaphor for coercive control in general. I mean, I think another great film about coercive control, which does it differently, is the reboot or the remake of The Invisible Man that came out a couple of years ago. That was fantastic too. So I would, if you fancy a really distracting, stimulating, entertaining, slightly embarrassing, because it's quite kitsch, it's quite cliched, it's the romance scenes, the sex scenes, they're obviously, but I think purposefully done in a sort of tongue-in-cheek fashion. This is a film that curiously manages to stay bright and breezy, even though it's dealing with something really dark and fucking twisted. And I think there's a lot to admire in that, and a lot to enjoy in that as well. You walk out of it relishing the success and the win for two strong women by the end of the film. And on that note, I'd probably give this film 85 out of 100.